Hello and welcome back to Machine Learning. I'm Jivita Christie, and in this video, we are going to talk about the Bayesian belief network. So let's begin. So what is the Bayesian belief network? Here is an example. So what we have here is a Bayesian belief network showing some probability related to rain and someone being late for their class. So the root node shows the probability of rain. And you can see there are two child nodes. So this is 1 and this is 2. And there are two people, Paul and Tim. And the first child node says, this is the probability of rain. What is the probability of Paul being late to class? And the second one shows, this is the probability of rain. What is the probability of Tim being late to class? Okay, so in both cases, these are the arcs which will show you where it is going. So you can say that Paul and Tim being late to class relies on whether or not it rains. And you are given the probability of the root node right here, true and false. So probability of raining is 0.1, probability of not raining is 0.9. And you are also given, this is something that you have to, this is also given to you, which is node conditional probability. So what this is probability about Paul being late to class, given the fact that it is raining or not raining. Okay, so if Paul is late to class and it is raining, then probability of Paul being late to class is 0.6. If it is raining, the probability of Paul being not being to class on time is 0.4. The next thing you have here is if it is not raining, the probability of Paul being late to class is 0.5. If it is not raining, then the probability of Paul not being late to class is at also 0.5. Okay. And similarly, you're given this probability for Tim. So if it is raining, probability of Tim being late to class is 0.8, but Tim not being late to class is 0.2. And if it is not raining, then probability of Tim being late is 0.1 and not being late is 0.9. Okay, so that is the Bayesian belief network, what that shows to us. Okay. Now using this Bayesian belief network, let's calculate the unconditional probability that Tim is late to class. So what we want to calculate is what is the probability that Tim is going to be late to class, regardless of whether or not it is raining. Okay, so to do that, this is the formula right here. So we are going to be writing probability of Tim being late to class is equal to probability of Tim being late, given that it is raining, into probability of rain, plus probability of Tim being late, given that it is not raining, into probability of not raining. Okay. So what are all these values? Tim being late and it is raining. We could go back and take a look. Tim being late and it's raining is 0.8. So we are going to write down 0.8 over here. 0.8 multiplied by probability of rain, which is, I think, 0.1. Okay. Add that to Tim being late, but it's not raining. Probability of that is 0.1. And multiply that by probability of not raining, which is 0.9. So what you get for this is 0.17, which is your answer to this question. Okay, the unconditional probability. So it does not depend on rain, but without depending on rain, what is the chance that Tim is going to be late? Let's now talk about the unconditional probability. Okay, before we move to that, let's see what this shows. It shows it is the most important use of the Bayesian belief network. to find out this unconditional probability and then find out the revised probability based on prior knowledge. So if you assume that there was rain today, and then the probability table would provide us information about probability of Paul being late to class or the probability of Tim being late to class, okay, from the distribution table itself. So that's what can be done using a Bayesian belief method. But if you do not know whether there was rain today or not, then we only know that Tim is late to class. And we can still arrive at the following probabilities. And how do we do that? So we can calculate the revised probability that there was rain today. How do we do that? So revised probability is this probability that it was raining given that Tim was late. So it is the opposite we are calculating now. So if that Tim was late, what is the chance that it was actually raining? So this is going to be very simple. This is the Bayes rule applied. So Tim was late given that it was raining. Multiply that by P of rain and divide that by probability of Tim being late. And the answer to this will be 0.8 into 0.1. You could, of course, calculate all this on your own, looking at the table. You can find all these answers. Divide this by 0.7, right? And 0.717 we calculated earlier. So if you see, it is going to be 0.747. So when you know that Tim is already late to class, what is the chance that it is raining? So there's a 47% chance that it's raining given that Tim is late to class. Okay, let's now calculate revised probability that Paul will be late to class. Okay, so we are now going to see what is the chance that Paul is going to be late to class given this data that we have. Okay. So using the Bayesian belief network, we can calculate this. We want to calculate that Paul is late. Okay, this can be calculated by P of Paul being late. Given that it is raining, we know that it is raining, right? So we know the probability for that. And P of rain, as we did for Tim, plus P of Paul being late, given that it is not raining, and so probability of not raining. That's what we need to calculate. And if you do that, you will be having this value as 0.6 multiplied by, now we know well that we did calculate this probability, right? So this is 0.6 into 0.47. We calculated probability of rain, so we are going to use that. Add that to 0.5 into probability of not raining today. So probability of raining today is 0.47. But now, if you know this is 0.47, then what is the probability of not raining? It will be 1 minus 0.47. Okay, so this is multiplied by 1 minus 0.47. And if you calculate all that, you will be getting 0.55. So there is a 55% chance that Paul is going to be late today. So that's how the Bayesian belief network works. So we used the concept of hard evidence and soft evidence. What is hard evidence? Evidence that the state of the variable is definitely as a particular value which is given to you. Okay. And in our example, we had the hard evidence that Tim is late to class. So we assumed in the beginning that Tim is late to class. Now calculate the probability of it raining today, probability of Paul being late to class. Okay. And so if a particular node is instantiated, then it will block propagation of evidence further down to its child nodes. So what is the soft evidence? It is that the evidence that provides the prior probability values for the node. The node that says Paul is late to class is soft evidence because you know something beforehand that Tim is late to class. Okay, what are the different types of connections that you can make in Bayesian classification? So one is a diverging connection, which we just saw, where the evidence can be transmitted between two child nodes from the same parent. That is what we saw here between Rain and Paul and Tim. Okay. The next type of connection in a Bayesian belief network is the serial connection, where any evidence entered at the beginning of the connection can be transmitted through the directed path, provided that no intermediate node on the path is instantiated. So in this case, there is no node between the parent node and the other nodes. So there is no intermediate node available. And this is what it looks like. So this is the parent node, Rain today. And because of that, there's a waterlogging at in train station, which directly affects Tim being late to class. The third type of connection is a converging connection, where the evidence can only be transmitted between two parents when the child, that means the converging node, has received some evidence. And the evidence can be either a hard evidence or a soft evidence. And this is a diagram for that. So you can see that the child node in this case is receiving information from two different parents instead of just one. And you can see that Tim had swimming class, and another reason is that it's raining today, which led to Tim being late to class. Now let's take a look at the importance or use or application of the Bayesian belief networks in machine learning. So a very common use of this is to find out updated knowledge about the state of a subset of variables, while the state of the other subset of variables is observed. So whenever you have a situation where one variable affects another variable, and you want to update the probability of one variable based on another variable, after getting some extra additional information that you did not have earlier, you could use the Bayesian network. And this concept here is known as probabilistic inference process of computing the posterior distribution of variables. And you are, of course, given some evidences which would allow you to, and the evidence can be a hard evidence or a soft evidence, and that would allow you to draw all these conclusions about the variables. So if you want to choose the values for a subset of variables in order to minimize some expected loss functions or decision errors, then this method, which is the Bayesian method, is quite an effective method. In other words, it is a mechanism for automatically applying Bayes' theorem to complex problems. Supervised learning is a prediction of results of a game based on the past analysis of results. That is one of the examples. You can also predict whether a tumor is malignant or benign, which means it is cancerous or non-cancerous. That can be also done using supervised learning. You could also predict prices for real estate and stocks and etc. All these things can be done using supervised learning. When we compare supervised versus unsupervised learning, you will notice that this is the difference. Here we use labeled data set, which means we have to provide lots of questions and answers to the machine so that the machine can learn. And when we talk about unsupervised learning, we have unlabeled data. Okay, so the machine is learning on its own. You don't have to give time to label your data. And there's also something else which is sort of a combination of both, which is called semi-supervised learning, which uses both labeled as well as unlabeled data. The classification model can be seen in this diagram right here. So first of all, you have a labeled training data, which contains all these values. Okay, this is a table. It contains values about 4 different people, their aptitude, communication scores, and which class they belong to. So it shows that Karuna, who has an aptitude of 2 and communication 5, belongs to a speaker class, and Bobby with a higher aptitude, less communication, but belongs to Intel, and so on. And so you will be applying a model or a classifier on this training data. And then the model can then be used to find out classes of new data. So for example, I have a new data here, Josh. whose aptitude is 5 and communication is 4.5. So based on my original data, I could determine that Josh is Intel because the model has been trained on this data, and it now knows that when aptitude is higher than communication, the person should be in the Intel class. These are the learning steps in the classification process. So first we have the problem which we want to solve. It could be anything like what we just saw. It could be that kind of a problem as well. Next, you have identification of required data. So identification of required data means you need to find out what kind of data is required for you to be able to solve the problem, because it won't always be true that you will have enough data to start solving your problem. So sometimes you have to download the data in the form of a data set, or sometimes you might have to collect data on your own, for example, from platforms like Twitter or Facebook. Once your data is collected and once you have your required data, the next thing you're going to do is data pre-processing, where you will work with cleaning your data, with identifying missing values in your data set, and making your data as suitable as possible for classification. Next, you will do a definition of training set. So in any kind of algorithm that you apply, you have to divide your data into a training set and a test set. The training set is used to train your model, and then the test set is used to check how accurately your model was trained. So when you want to measure the model's accuracy, you will be using the you'll be using the test data set. So most of the time, out of 100% of a data set, we divide 70% as training and 30% as test, or it could be also an 80-20 split. Either of that is considered acceptable. And next you have algorithm selection, because there are many algorithms for classification, as we will see later. So you have to decide what's going to work best for your model. And oftentimes it's better to just try out all the algorithms and then see which one is giving you the best accuracy for your model. The next step is to train your model. So in this case, you will be training your model using whatever equations or algorithms that you have selected. And once your model is trained, you will also be providing here some parameter training. So these parameters will help your model to be trained better. And once the model is trained, you can now test the model using the test data set that you created. And if you find that the accuracy is good enough, okay, then you can say you've built your classifier successfully. If it isn't good enough, then you might want to change some of the parameters for training so that it can get a better accuracy. Now let's take a look at some of the typical classification problems. One of them is image classification. So you might be given questions or problems like, there are lots of images given and you have to separate from their images of dogs and images of cats. Or you are given several images of objects and you have to separate out red objects from blue objects or green from yellow, something like that. So all those are image classification problems. You also have disease prediction. So disease prediction is, for example, identifying whether a tumor is malignant or benign. So you want to find out if a tumor is cancerous or not. And that is disease prediction. It's not just tumors, but you could predict other kinds of diseases as well. You could also do a prediction of win-loss in games. You can find out whether a team is going to win or lose. You can also predict if there is going to be an earthquake, a flood, or any other such natural calamity. You can also perform handwriting recognition using classification algorithms. So you could find out who has written that particular text. And let's take a look at some common classification algorithms. So first we have the k-nearest neighbor algorithm, which is also known as KNN. This algorithm works on the basis of Euclidean distance, which means if you have several data points, it is going to find out which of the data points are very close to each other, and it's going to group them together as one group. So that is the k-nearest neighbor algorithm. Next, we have the decision tree. It's exactly like a tree data structure that you study in a subject called data structures. And it has roots and child nodes, and it has leaf nodes and everything like that. So what it basically does is if you give it a data set, it is going to identify the features of the data set and decide to split the data set several times recursively using the features. And then using those splits, it will create some rules. And so it will be simple if-else conditions. And using those if-else conditions, you will be able to classify your data. Next, we have random forest. Random forest is a sort of a collection of decision trees, because that's how the word forest comes, right? Forest is a collection of trees. So also random forest is a collection of decision trees. And the idea behind random forest is that you create not just one decision tree, but create multiple decision trees with a different set of rules. Okay, so one decision tree will have different if-else conditions than the other decision tree. And so every decision tree has a different set of rules. And when you have to classify an object, you will ask an opinion of all the decision trees that you have. And then you will pick the opinion that is given by the majority of the trees. So it's just an attempt to increase the accuracy. Next, we have support vector machine. And this is another algorithm that can help you to classify data by creating a hyperplane. That's sort of a line that can differentiate between one data set, one set of data, another set of data based on similar or dissimilar properties. And finally, we have the naive Bayes algorithm or classifier. And this is something that I have already covered in one of my previous videos, so you could take a look at that. So these are the 5 common classification algorithms that we are going to be studying in the next couple of videos. So I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.